I think we're live. We should be live. Hope we're live. What's up, beautiful people? Hunter Homestead here, GM at 247 Fighting Championships, with another beautiful edition of the Pittsburgh Combat Sports Podcast. This is my radio voice I'm trying out for you guys. I hope you like it. um, we got a different kind of show today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pretty stoked about it. I will say there's a big UFC pay-per-view tomorrow. UFC 278 Saturday. Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. What a banger. And a welterweight title fight. You know, title fights are always awesome. Ever since GSP left the sport. Sorry, Luke. Didn't mean to trigger you. Luke Payson, our amazing commentator, is obsessed with GSP. So sorry I had to remind you of that, Luke. He's gone. He's not coming back. Kamaru has successfully taken that throne and kind of run with it. The dude is looking borderline unstoppable. A lot of people are saying Kamaru might be the best of all time. We'll see. We'll see. He's got a good test Saturday against Leon Edwards. And I like it. I like the matchup. I'm just messaging our guest. We've got MMA Junkies Nolan King joining the show here shortly. So I had to hire a pro. You know, ever since I took over as GM at 247, I haven't been as into UFC, and I don't mean that I don't like it as much. I still love it. I still love UFC fights and watching UFC events and following the UFC, but I don't know the ins and outs like I used to. I used to be obsessed. I used to read every article, used to watch every video, see every tweet, every Instagram post, every this, every that. I used to not miss a thing in the UFC world, and now I miss a lot. So I had to hire the big guns, had to bring in MMA Junkies Nolan King. So Nolan, for those of you who don't know, has been working for MMA Junkie for quite some time now. Definitely made a name for himself as one of the best young journalists. And he may not even be that young anymore. I'm so used to calling him like this young journalist up and coming, but I think he's pretty much just arrived at this point. Might be doing him a bit of a disservice by referring to him like, yeah, he's pretty good for as young as he is. Like, no, the dude's just good. He's just established. Just call it what it is. Dude's an amazing reporter, good writer, does everything extremely well, very multifaceted, very into the prospects as well, which is something that I really like. He's very, he's not just chasing headlines. I was trying to think of the right way to say that, and I think that's the best way I can put it. You guys know the kind of writer that I'm talking about, that just chases headlines, that just wants them page views and reactions and wants to stir things up. There's a balance between doing that and being talented and doing the right thing, reporting well, having some journalistic integrity. And look, I'll be the first to say it. You can go too far on the other side too. There's also journalists that are so by the book that they're boring and nobody wants to read them. And it's just this like vanilla Channel 5 at 6 p.m. news report, that nobody cares about. So there's definitely a balance, and I think Nolan hits that extremely well. So I'm excited to have Nolan on the show. Nolan actually used to write for me when I was over at Flow Combat. I was editing Flow Combat with my dude, Dwayne Finley. We were kind of running the show there. Nolan was one of the guys that we had that was a huge part of the team when we were, kind of at our peak, doing our best work. Nolan was an extremely big part of that. So he was a guy that, I don't know, I don't even think he had much experience at that time. But I'll tell you what, the dude hit the ground running and took off with it, just a natural with journalism and with everything. I mean, he's great. If you guys don't know Nolan's work, I'll throw it up on the screen here for you real quick. Let me pull up his profile, his little Twitter page. Here's Nolan on Twitter. As you can see, pretty awesome. He does great work at MMA underscore Kings. So go follow Nolan. He's going to be joining the show here shortly. Great young reporter, 17,000 followers. The dude is definitely making a name for himself and doing awesome work there for MMA Junkie. It's unfortunate that he's from Boston, so you'll have to forgive him for that. He's not perfect. The kid does. I called him a kid again. I gotta stop that. He's a grown man now, Hunter. He is a grown man from Boston. It's a shame. It's just you can't help where you're from. I get it. He grew up in New England. He's all about New England sports and Boston sports, and you're allowed to be wrong. He's allowed to be wrong. He's not perfect. He does great work, but he's not perfect. So that's where we're at. And yes, that is a gallon of Diet Turner's tea that you just saw there. So listen, if you're not on the Diet Lemon Turner's train, our intern, Dylan Cole, who is amazing. We love Dylan as well. Dylan's doing awesome work for us. You've probably seen some of his videos and reels and things like that and maybe not even known it was him. But we got Dylan helping us out. He goes to Pitt right now. So he's killing it. He had the audacity the other day to say that Schneider's tea was better than Turner's. And Schneider's is fine. It's fine. The carton, it's got an iconic look. I get it. But here's where Dylan went wrong. He never had Diet Lemon Turner's. And everybody's going to say, oh, Diet, why would you like Diet? Everything is awful. Diet soda sucks. Diet this, Diet that. It's all bad. No. Diet Turner's is better than full sugar Turner's. It's not as syrupy. It's not as cloying. It's not as it doesn't just stick in your mouth. It goes down smooth. Diet Lemon Turner's is such a treat that if you've never had it, I would urge you to just stop listening to the podcast, actually, which, as you know, I would never urge you to do that. But just stop and leave the house and go get some Diet Turner's. Because if you've never had the Diet Lemon Turner's, then you've pretty much never lived. How can I trust anything that you have to say about anything if you've never had Diet Lemon Turner's? So we got Dylan about to join the show, and I'm just going to leave him in the waiting room to stew on this because it's on him that he's never had Diet Lemon Turner's until I told him to try it. So I'm here like housing an entire gallon. Let's see if we can bring him in. He's at an amusement park, and I'm not sure how his connection's going to be, but we're about to try it out. Let's see. What's up, Dylan? What's up, Dylan Cole?
How's it going? We're here live, Pittsburgh Combat Sports Podcast from Wildwater Kingdom in Allentown. And I heard you were talking about the diet, and I gotta say, I just need guys like you around. How am I supposed to know? You know, these paths for the non-born yinzers out here.
That's fair. You are from the wrong side of the state, and we don't hold that against you. We still love you nonetheless, but you figure it out slowly. When you tried the Diet Turner's, I think you changed your mind. I think I did convert you.
Yeah, for sure. The Schneiders, I liked the regular, but Turner's, I was like, ooh, this is the right amount of sweet.
Exactly. TJ Timbo. Schneider's tastes like Mon water. I don't know about I don't disagree with Timbo on much either, and he's right to a degree that if you're comparing it to Turner's, it does. But I wouldn't be mad if somebody just handed me some Schneider's tea. I would drink it.
Yeah, it was fine. It was great. I just gotta unlock the new. It's like, how are you supposed to know? All right, so Ryan was telling me he drank milk 10 years, and then after that he started doing IPAs. It's like, how are you supposed to open up to that world? You know?
You need the gateway. You need the gateway drinks. I totally agree. You need that kind of introduction into the world. But I'm just happy that I could be the one to bestow Diet Turner's upon you, man. That's awesome. It's probably one of my greatest accomplishments, really.
You know, how many great accomplishments could you have anyway, right? But,
I'm maxed out.
Yeah, that's a blessing. God bless.
Dude, for sure. Nice. So, Dylan, we got Nolan King from MMA Junkie is going to be joining here any minute. So we're going to break down UFC 278 with him while you're riding these rides and whatnot. All I'm going to ask before I get you out of here, because I don't want to take up too much of your time at the amusement park, is what is the best ride at Dorney Park? Why should somebody go to Dorney Park? Is it better than Kennywood? You're not allowed to say it's better than Kennywood, even if it is, for the record.
This one's really gonna break your heart. Never been to Kennywood yet.
I'm booting you.
I've seen it.
I'm booting you, dog. I'm booting you off the podcast.
I don't blame you, man. Kennywood's such a staple, and I just haven't had the chance yet.
All right. Well,
let's go to the bar. But Thorny,
if
this is my first. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say, if I get to introduce you to Turner's Tea and Kennywood, like if I get to force you into both of those things, I've done my Yinzer duty for life. Like that's it.
You did your Yinzer tour.
Yep.
Your service, yeah.
So we got Nolan backstage right now. He's breaking up. Dylan's we're losing you, dog.
Keep him waiting.
You're breaking up. We're breaking up, just like Timbo said he would break up if somebody hands him a Schneider's tea. So I'm going to kick Dylan out. I was glad that he could join for a second to enlighten the world on the beauties of Turner's tea. But we're going to get him out of here and let him get back to the rides and bring Nolan in. Nolan is here in waiting. Look at this guy just sitting there, just waiting for his chance to talk in the waiting room. All right. Catch you later, Dylan. Enjoy the rides, dude. All right. Nolan King. Oh, no. There he is. There he is.
There I am.
You were there. You were there. Then you weren't there. Now you're there again. What's up, dude?
What is going on, man? It has been a minute, at least in this sort of capacity. I know we've stayed in touch over the years since our Flow Combat adventure, but yeah, it's great to be on camera in the StreamYard Zoom sort of world that we live in now, huh?
It's so stupid, man. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of conversation, to be honest. I like it. Like, obviously, it's better than not talking at all, but nothing beats face-to-face, in-person conversation still. So
yeah,
this works.
No doubt,
this works for now, but it's for sure not ideal. But I'm glad you could make it on, dude. Like we were kind of saying in the text, it's been way too long for sure since we did something like this or talked about fights at all. So what's new in your world, man? I still follow you on Twitter. Like you said, we still keep in touch and stuff, but you're just growing and growing and growing. What's life like as Nolan King right now?
Yeah, it's good, man. I just moved a couple of weeks ago to a new apartment. So kind of a little switch there. So it's been hectic trying to, summer's closing down and I'm moving all sorts of shit in and out. And obviously the UFC seems to stack their schedule in the summer as well. So it's been busy. It's been busy time, but I think I'm finally getting to the point where I can kind of like enjoy the tail end of the summer here. And next week there's no event, so it should be a little bit more laid back than the pay-per-view week. But yeah, nice. Everything's good. I have no complaints, and weather's beautiful here. And I heard, Santa Claus hears everything that the kids do when they're wrong. I hear all the Boston slander that goes on. And just because I wasn't in that waiting room yet, I heard those comments that you made. But right now, man, there's no complaints about Boston. It's beautiful weather here. This is like a really nice stretch of the year. I'm sure where you are as well. It's pretty nice too down there in Pittsburgh.
It is, man. It's beautiful right now in Pittsburgh. You got to love this kind of weather. It's a little humid today. It definitely can get on the humid side, but overall, no complaints, dude. I'm looking at your profile here. I got it pulled up on the screen for people watching the podcast. The amount, like, this is one thing that I'll always say about you. Like, you're a grinder for sure, but like a high quality grinder, which is probably the most useful kind of writer that a site could have, right? Like, you're still putting out a ridiculous output, but not sacrificing quality in the process. So I'm just looking at it, and it looks like you've done like 6 or 7 articles just in the past 24 hours. So what is, for people out there who have never experienced it or never been on this side of things, what's it like covering a major pay-per-view like tomorrow's for an outlet like MMA Junkie? Like what are these couple days like for you?
Yeah, it's busy, man. It's we kind of have it down to a bit of a science where we know what the week's going to provide before we even get in there, right? Like, we know there's going to be media day on Wednesday. We know there's going to be probably a press conference on a Thursday. We know that on Friday is going to have weigh-ins in the morning and the ceremonials in the afternoon, and then obviously you have the fights. So we do have it kind of down to a science here. It is a grind, especially with the UFC schedule. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that even them adding just a few more events in each year has not been noticeable. It's been very noticeable. It seems like these weeks that we have a week off, it's like, wow, this is like something that I forgot existed. So the pay-per-view week's definitely a grind, just because a lot of what we do is there's kind of 2 categories when it comes to like a media day, right? There's the big names that everybody's going to be interested in regardless of what they say. And then there's everybody else that maybe doesn't have a name, but might say something interesting. So when you have a card like this weekend, it's maybe a little bit more tame than say like a UFC 276 back in July, where you looked at it and you were like, damn, Robbie Lawler's fighting on the prelims. Like, you know, there's a
Mm-hmm.
million people, no matter what they say, we're going to have to go into this event and really cover in depth. Whereas this week, it's kind of like those 3 fights at the top. And like, we knew we were going to go in and do those. And then we waited and heard what other people had to say as well. So it's busy, no doubt. There's definitely a difference between a pay-per-view and a fight night as well.
Yeah, that's super true. I mean, you guys at MMA Junkie cover it from all angles, and you don't miss a story. You know, everything gets published, everything's out there, and you guys also provide some really in-depth analysis. So I think people will really enjoy that. Looking for MMA coverage. One thing that I'll say, you mentioned something interesting there, where in terms of the media days, like there's always that guy that you just have to write about. Like if it's Usman for this one, obviously the champion's going to get a lot of coverage or whatever. But you were always a guy, and I think what clicked so well at Flow Combat for you was that you didn't care about how popular a fighter was. Like you're just genuinely interested in fighters, and you would talk to prospects, amateur fighters, low-level pro fighters. Like you're just in it for the stories and for the coverage and for respecting these athletes. So I think that's what worked so well with us together, and what our viewers, like 247 Fighting Championships, anybody watching or listening, like they'll relate to that on this level, because that's regional MMA in a nutshell, right? Like you got to care about these guys on a different kind of level than whatever, you know, just being interested in all the views and everything, because it's not about that. It's about what they put themselves through, their journeys, their stories, them as human beings is so much more important than anybody wants to give them credit for. So you've always been a guy that saw that. And I don't think I ever really asked you, but like, why is that? Why were you always drawn to that side of fighting versus just doing it for the views and for the popularity kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's almost kind of like being the first one to kind of tell a story. I always think is cool. Like I think it's cool to hear, like, you know, these guys that we hear from every week, you know, hearing from I'm just trying to think of a fighter, random UFC, like, you know, Gleason Tebow or something when he was in the UFC. Like we would interview him every media day, but it hit a point where it was like, you know, how much is different between these interviews, right? But when you deal with somebody that nobody's ever been introduced to before, regardless of what they give you, it's going to be something that is new. So there's that, but then there's also, like, I mean, you look at some of these fighters' stories that maybe are a little bit more unbelievable than others, and sometimes you end up, you know, doing an interview and you're like, damn, this is like one of the crazier things I've ever heard of. Like, you know, I think the one that comes to my mind was Terrence McKinney. Like, obviously everybody knows his story now, but I think you know, not to like toot my own horn, but I do think I was the first one to publish like a pretty solid like a feature about it. You know, when he was on the Contender Series the first time when he lost. Like, I think there's certain stories. There was always, I think there was this misperception that just because somebody wasn't popular, that to our audience, that they wouldn't, like some name they never heard of, that they wouldn't care about the story. And I think that that's been kind of disproven, where these guys, it could be Joe Schmo Fighter X, and if they have a good story and it gets some traction, people read it and they say, damn, this is crazy, it ends up doing better than a lot of people that have names that have, you know, UFC level 10, 12, whatever fights. So it's been a rewarding experience as well. You know, some of these guys, you know, I've interviewed now from the regional scene, and they're contenders, you know, so it's cool to see that whole growth, man. I really enjoy it. And I think it's pretty true side to the story, to the sport, you know?
It really is, man. And then there's the interesting trade-off as well, if you'd call it that, of like when sometimes you get these lower level guys that end up becoming stars, and like they remember that you were one of the guys who cared about them before they were somebody. Now everybody wants to talk to them, but then you establish yourself as one of their go-to guys that they can trust, that they have a relationship with, and things like that. So it's very like the traditional journalism ethics kind of go out the window a little bit when you can become friendly with fighters, if you will. Like no journalist wants to admit that, but let's be honest, like everybody's got their favorites and the guys that treat them well and you know, have a good relationship with them. And I just always think it's interesting when you can follow a guy from the bottom up to the top and then still maintain that relationship all the way through. It's special for the journalists too. And I know you've done that with some guys for sure. You're very well connected with the whole New England fight scene. So I just think it's interesting, man, to watch guys do that. And I think it's special. I just appreciate that you've always seen the other side of things versus just in it for, you know, the views and pure journalism. Like you've always kind of seen the humanity behind it. So that always resonated.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's one of those things too. It's like, you know, you say, obviously guys remember, and I think some people might look at that as like a cliche, but they definitely do. You know, I was out in Vegas right before the pandemic, and, you know, I interviewed before he was in the UFC, like a guy that's in the top 10 in the featherweight division right now. And I ran into him out there, and I'd only interviewed him, I think, before he was in the UFC. I haven't talked to him for years, but we were talking. He was talking to my coworker John Morgan, and I just, I came up, so he introduced me, and he was like, "Hey man, I remember you were the first person to ever interview me, like back when, you wrote for some site that probably doesn't exist anymore, which it didn't. MMA Today is now gonzo, but it was cool. Like it was literally a guy I think I'd done 2 interviews on before he was in the UFC, and he's done all these interviews since then, and he remembered. So that was neat to hear,
That's really cool, man. See, that's what it's all about, man. You got to start somewhere. You got to respect these guys because, as we see, even our amateur fighters, what they put their bodies through, and in a way, it's even crazier because they're not getting fight purses. Like they're literally not getting paid to go out there. They're just either chasing a dream or doing it as a hobby with extremely dire consequences. Like some guys just want to fight because they love martial arts and they want to test themselves, which is crazy to me. Like of all things to do, getting in the cage and fighting to prove it, and like just knowing what they're going through to do it just creates this level of respect that's pretty unbelievable. So yeah, man, shout out to all the fighters out there. Like I got ridiculous respect for everybody who gets in that cage and does it. And now going from that into now you're covering the sport at the highest level and have been covering the sport at the highest level and getting to see like these true professional athletes going at it. What's that process been like for you, man? Because just like a fighter, it feels like you've kind of climbed your way up as well.
Yeah, it's been neat. It's one of those things that I definitely like take a step back once in a while, and I'm just kind of like puzzled by the whole thing. Like it's just kind of like, sure, it happens gradually over time, and maybe you have a big opportunity here and a big one there, and then those become normal, and then you have another bigger opportunity, and so just I think it's important to kind of take a step back sometimes and think like, I'm pretty privileged to be able to do this, and being around the fighters, like you said, I mean, they're the most fascinating people ever. I mean, just when you think that you've seen all the characters and stuff, somebody comes out of the woodwork and you're from somewhere that you don't necessarily know whether it's a small change or a big one, and just to be able to some of these stories, it seems like a never-ending process of just and being able to learn about life through fighting too. There's a lot of things that I think coincide, like stuff that I've learned about drug testing, about geography, about like legal stuff's going on with Cain Velasquez now. I'm sitting around reading 400-page legal things. Like there's just so many aspects of life that I would have never like delved into or really had any idea what was going on if it wasn't for the sport. So yeah, it's definitely been a privilege. It's been cool, and it's given me a lot of respect for these guys that go in there and really are a different breed of human being.
Yeah, man, there's a really interesting balance there too. And I think Jared Gordon, I just saw his comments from Media Day. That was extremely interesting. His response when somebody asked him whatever the exact question was, how MMA has made his life better. And he was essentially like, MMA hasn't made my life better. It's made it worse. And he was just so real about the anxiety and everything that goes into it. And like the things that are fulfilling to him, family time, being able to help others, like these things that actually give him a purpose in life. He essentially views the UFC as, a platform to do those other things that he's passionate about. And I thought it was one of the realest answers that anybody's ever given in a press conference, man. You don't normally get that level of candor from people in a response. So shout out to Jared Gordon for that response. That was awesome. And like he mentioned a few times, like I do love MMA in ways, and like I love competing. I'm thankful for it. It was nothing like that. But he just kept it super real and tied it back. Like we said, like the humanity of it all, he tied it back in a really powerful way.
Yeah, no doubt. I think listening to some of the media days, sometimes it's like having a song on in the background and you can hear it and you know which way it's going to go. And when he said that, it was almost like the song had a different, verse or something. It kind of really caught my attention. It was an answer that went in a totally different direction than I expected. So I really do, appreciate guys when they're honest. I get sometimes it's difficult to be like, being in the public eye. There's certain scenarios guys are like, what's the reward in saying something that's going to catch a lot of attention? But anytime somebody does say something that's that honest, I mean, it's definitely something that's worth covering and worth people listening to. I mean, that's the whole point of what we do is to get people's messages out. And I thought that was a really interesting sequence, like you said there. Probably the most interesting for Media Day for me.
I would say so, and
well,
I would say
besides Luke Rockhold, but
so I was just stealing my segue, Nolan. But I was just going to say, like, speaking of keeping it real, probably the most popular guy in Media Day was Luke Rockhold. I'm sure, like, as in terms of views and stuff on your site, I'm sure you can attest that his comments are getting a lot of traction. So I want to jump right into the card on that level of co-main event between Paulo Costa and Luke Rockhold. Convince me, Nolan. Convince me that Paulo is not going to knock Luke out in the first round, because that's all I can possibly see happening here.
No, I'm not going to convince you otherwise, because that's my prediction as well. But if, just to play devil's advocate, I mean, these guys, it's funny, right? Like I know what's going on here. I know I can get suckered into a fight through trash talk. And that's what happened to me with this one. Like when it was first announced, I was like, oh man, I want them to give Luke give him a step back, give him a vet, somebody that's not like a contender right now. He hasn't fought for 3 years. The last time he went in there was ugly. Really didn't love the matchup. Now I'm kind of about it. Like I think those guys totally did their job at the press conference yesterday. Came off like authentic. They didn't necessarily do anything too cringy like we've seen in the past sometimes when guys get involved with trash talk. But it's made me interested, man. I think Luke looked really good. This is my one thing I will say. He looked very good at weigh-ins today. I was a little bit interested to see how he would look back at middleweight, but I thought he looked really good. He looked healthy. He looked energetic up there on the scales, and obviously he's fighting with a little bit of an edge. So who knows? Maybe he'll go in there and be a little bit more aggressive than he usually is, and a little more confident, and maybe not as confident as when he fought Michael Bisping the second time and got knocked out. We don't want that, but who knows? If he goes out there and finishes Paulo Costa, I mean, it will definitely be interesting coming on the heels of his his comments leading up to this fight.
For sure, dude. And I think, we're not affiliated with any betting service or anything, but I like looking at fight odds anyway, just to see what people are thinking, what's going on. I will say, Luke Rockhold by submission with 10-1 odds on that. I kind of like it. I kind of like that. If he can wear Costa out and get the fight there, dude, Rockhold's grappling remains elite. Like his grappling has been slept on his entire career. That's an intriguing bet to me. I'm not saying I would take it necessarily, but if it happened, I wouldn't be like totally shocked.
Yeah, no, I think, I think obviously Luke, we've seen it with guys like Glover Teixeira and some others, like those guys that have just trained for so long, the fundamentals, the guys you'd play pickup basketball with back in the day, and they'd be like 50, but they would be draining because they knew all the fundamentals to the game. Similar thing going on there. So I think he definitely has that sort of advantage. And the other thing I was thinking too, like, obviously people look at a layoff and more times than not, they view it as rust. But for a guy that's taken a lot of damage in his career and had a lot of injuries, like maybe it's not necessarily the worst thing that he hasn't been, punched in the head or knocked out in the last couple of years. So I'm interested to see, obviously his submission game, but also on the feet, how he holds up,
Not only that, but kind of somebody at his level, you talk about rust, like he has so much experience that I don't even know that rust exists for somebody at that point. Like he's done it so long that it might not even affect him the way they would affect a younger fighter taking a long layoff or whatever. Like he's already, I think we can agree, past his athletic prime one way or another. Like you said, he's kind of got that old man game going for him now, which is crazy. But that's the truth of it. Like this time off, that's an interesting point that I haven't heard many people make, that the time off may actually benefit him. And I see that. I just think this is definitely a tough matchup for him against a guy who, hits extremely hard. That's a bad matchup for Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the bottom line right there is like, again, I could see maybe Luke beating somebody in the rankings. I could see him coming in and getting a win, but I would have a hard time. It would be a real mental gymnastic for me to pick him in this fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then just kind of bumping up to the main event real fast, I feel exactly the same. Like picking Leon Edwards, I can't see it, dude. I can't talk myself into it. So am I missing something? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think Leon's finally gotten his respect. I think just the fact that there's like this weird effect sometimes where a guy's overlooked, but then people say he's overlooked so much that like that's no longer true. Is somebody really overlooked if Dana's asked about him every single time? Why is Leon Edwards being overlooked? Like every time Usman gets brought up. So I don't think he's overlooked anymore. I think he's getting the respect he deserves. Obviously, the win streak is impressive. I will say the thing about it is I don't think a lot of those wins have necessarily aged well. It's not like you look at it and you're like, oh, damn, he beat all these guys before we knew how good they were. Like, it's more like the other way. It's more like, damn, he beat these guys that kind of went downhill a little bit afterwards. So I think it'll be competitive. I think Leon is an elite welterweight, but I think it's Usman above everyone. Colby's kind of by himself as well. And then I guess we'll see what Chimaev has to offer as well. Maybe he can start being in those conversations if he beats Nate. But I have a tough time seeing Kamaru, fighting anyone 10 times and not winning 10 times with the exception of Colby or maybe Hamzat.
It's kind of crazy, and I'm right with you. I mean, he's at that level that I think people will remember GSP getting to that level too. And to be fair, GSP looked that way until Matt Serra caught him, or until Johnny Hendricks arguably beat him. Like, everybody kind of has that point where they do seem invincible until they're not. Like, that's MMA in a nutshell right there. Like, nobody kind of just remains undefeated forever unless you're Khabib or John Jones. So, and even John Jones has some question marks on some of his later fights. So it's tough, dude.
People criticize Khabib too. You can't win. He jumped out. Who did he fight? He didn't defend his title as much as GSP or Anderson. So there's no perfect scenario, man. Obviously, this MMA game is cruel, and it's just a matter of who gets out a little less scathed than others at the end of the day.
Yeah. Kamaru, for me, the thing that sets him apart is just his game itself. His skill set is just so perfect, in my opinion. Like, if you want to build a fighter that can play it safe and also be devastating when he needs to be, action-packed when he needs to be, he's like GSP with a little more power in my eyes. And it's a really good, obviously, it works pretty well inside the cage for him. So it's just hard for me to see where somebody's going to piece him up or tear him apart. I guess people picking Leon is the argument that he'll be able to keep the fight standing and pick him apart on the feet. Like, that's all that I could even remotely see in Leon's favor.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't see any other path to victory. I think that Kamaru is really operating on another level at this point. I actually like the GSP comparison in, like you just mentioned, like in technique, in the stuff he brings to the cage, not just like, the fact there might be the two greatest they're the two greatest welterweights ever. But it'll be interesting, man. I think obviously this is Leon's shot. I think I don't want to say that it'll be the only time he gets a title fight, but thinking about how hard it was for him to get this first one, he's got to capitalize on it. I'm sure he's not stupid. He knows that, and he'll be giving it his all. And then for Kamaru, I think, the fight against him and everybody said Colby Covington was his perfect foil, the villain he needed, all that stuff. I think that's going to be proven true for the time. But in the long term, I think Chimaev's going to be his money fight, man. I think that's going to be one people really dig into. The hardcores are going to dig in, and then also I think ramifications outside of our little bubble as well.
Yep. Chimaev's definitely the guy that I see in that weight class that I look at and I'm like, all right, he might be a problem. He might be the guy. He might actually have what it takes. So his fight against Nate is obviously going to tell a lot towards that. But again, we talk about Leon Edwards' wins not aging very well. His last win was also Nate Diaz. So what does beating Nate Diaz even mean at this point? I don't know. I don't know if it really means what it once did.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another rep. I guess we get to see him for a little bit more than we've seen him. I think, honestly, the Gilbert Burns fight was like, that was very like, it's not like this is the Conor McGregor thing where, he's going into a fight against Aldo or Chad Mendes and we're like, the last guy he beat was Dennis Seaver. Like, we have like the sample of him fighting an elite welterweight and what can happen. So I think this is kind of a weird, just like momentum builder, UFC trying to maximize on, kind of recklessly like use Nate's star power. Who can we boost up? Who can we give the biggest boost to? Because we're not going to have Nate anymore. We don't care about his star power in the short term. Who are we going to give it to? And I think that it's just trying to get Chimaev, people more aware of him. And I guess it will do that trick. I think it's going to be a big fight if it happens.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. So I think we agree on the main and co-main. I want you to give me one more fight on this card that just has your attention. Like, what's the fight that you think people can't miss tomorrow night?
Oh, I mean, come on, man. Jose Aldo and Merab. I know it's like chronological order here that we're just picking the top three, but to me, having a guy with some of the best takedown defense ever. I mean, who has like a highlight reel of takedown defense? If you go to YouTube, True. Jose Aldo has one, and it's interesting to watch, to see his balance and guys trying to essentially Frankie Edgar, like face planting at times with Aldo sticking his leg, like slipping his leg out. So for him to fight a guy like Merab, who's got, bantamweight takedown records, I think that's stylistically fascinating. And then you add in the fact that this is a big fight for the division, potential title implications on the line. Anytime you see a legend like Jose Aldo fight, it's interesting to begin with. So all three of those layers, man, I think that this is the fight. If you were to be like, which one are you most excited for? You feel like internally is your biggest, most, fight that you are invested in, I would pick that one.
Yeah. And it's crazy to me that, like, for some reason, Jose Aldo felt like he was washed at one point. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying that. Like, when Peter Yan tore him up, like, it felt like his time was over. And now he's just rattled off wins over top quality guys. And it's like, he might not be dead yet. Like, Jose might still be just as good as ever. Like, it's amazing how he just will not go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy. Through weight classes, through generations of fighters, like all these guys, contenders come and go, and this dude's still remaining. And I think it's kind of the opposite of what we said with Leon. Like, if you go back and look at his losses in retrospect, they don't seem as bad as they did at the time. You know, that they were budding champions. They were a budding Max Holloway, a budding Peter Yan. Like, those are good names. Now we know how good those guys are. And really the only one was Marias, the split decision loss that a lot of people thought was a bad judge's decision. So for me, I think Jose Aldo's still elite. I would love to. I mean, him and his coaching staff must just, their fight IQs must be off the charts for them to be able to adjust throughout all the years in technique and game planning and strategy, weight cuts, all that stuff. So it's just a real treat. We're going to miss him when he's gone, you know?
Very, very true. So, like you were saying, I mean, his resume is crazy. Like the back-to-back to Max Holloway, obviously, that proved to just be a horrible matchup for Jose. But then solid wins here. These 3 losses, obviously, you just touched on it. And Marias, like, debatable whether he actually lost that. But Peter Yan and Volkanovski, like, zero shame in losing to either of those guys. And now the 3 wins, though, are what stand out the most to me. Like, these are top-level dudes and have, like we talk about Leon Edwards' wins not aging well. These wins have aged really well. Like,
Yeah.
these are guys that still look good in retrospect. And Chito Vera, obviously, emerging as one of the best in the division. So it's crazy, dude. This is a heck of a matchup. Like, at the end of the day, I got to ask you for a prediction, obviously. Like, how do you actually see it panning out? Because just like the first 2 we talked about, you know, the Rockhold fight and obviously the main event, like, I see pretty clear, pretty decisive winners in those ones. This one,
yeah,
no, I can talk myself into pretty much any result in this one.
Yeah, I can as well. And, you know, my least confident pick of the 3 we talked about for sure by a mile, but I'm going to have to lean with Aldo. I just think, again, I have a tendency, if you look at my picks over time, sometimes it's come back to bite me in the butt, a la Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor. But I always seem to side with the guy that, like, I know is tried and true, who's been there, who's fought elite. We know what to get out of him. And Merab, this is a huge step up. You know, no offense. He has some wins over notable people as well, over Marlon Moraes and others. But for me, I think that this one against Aldo is a whole nother level. And I can tell you Aldo's ready for Merab. I'm just not sure if Merab's ready for Aldo. And that's why I'm going to say Aldo wins by decision.
Nice. I like it, man. I love the pick. We got a little fan question here for you. Bonus question. The O'Malley-Yan fight. Like, how do you see O'Malley-Yan going?
I mean, in my head, like right off the bat, when this was announced, I thought, damn, you know, Piotr's going to kill him. And we'll see, like, over time. Again, I'm a sucker, so I'm sure the more I think about it, I'll start to think about O'Malley and what he brings to the table and if he can do it. But to me, I just think stylistically, it's about as tough of a fight in that division for him as you could think of. And that's a lot of times people will say, oh, what if he fought a wrestler or somebody to take him down? But for me, it's like, I think Petr Yan is a better striker than Sean O'Malley in pretty much every facet. So for me, it's almost like he's kind of beating him at his own game, which I think is kind of a scary threat at times as well. With a really good grappler, Sean O'Malley would always have that knockout threat, right? And sure, he's got it against Petr Yan, but Yan is on paper a better striker than him. So I don't know what other weapons or things that O'Malley could pull out of his arsenal if things went south. But I do feel pretty confident in saying I think that Jan's gonna win the fight. We'll say I'll give Sean O'Malley some street cred here. I'll say that Jan gets it done by decision.
Nice. There you go. Street cred. I like that. Dude, I think I'm a little, like, I'm higher on O'Malley than a lot of people, I think. When I watch him fight, I see somebody that's, like, genuinely special. And I'm not even talking skill for skill. It's just the way he moves, the way he switches stances, how comfortable he looks everywhere just feels special to me. He feels like the kind of guy that, like, the better his opponent gets, the better he will also get. He just strikes me as that kind of guy that can, like, rise to the level of his opponent, which kind of, you know, it remains to be seen to a certain level. But I think the more pressure that somebody can apply to him and the more somebody can threaten him, the more he can exploit them and look even better in return. So that's how I see O'Malley. Honestly, I agree with you, though, that on paper it's a bad matchup in terms of, you know, if you were going to beat O'Malley, this is probably the guy, like, tailor-made to do it. But I still think O'Malley's got a different level that we haven't seen yet, man. I really do. I rewatched that Chito Vera fight actually recently, and obviously that's his one loss, but O'Malley gets so much flack for saying that he doesn't count it as a loss, but dude, I don't either. like you can't objectively watch that fight and conclude that O'Malley wasn't clearly winning and clearly in control before his foot and leg gave out on it. Like, that matters. That matters to me for sure. So I don't know, man. It remains to be seen. I think that's what's exciting about O'Malley is that it remains to be seen exactly how good he is. But this is definitely the fight where we're about to find out.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, the bantamweight division right now is so good, and there's so many contender fights coming up, and there's a lot of fresh matchups. I mean, even with the champion, it's Dillashaw's been around for a while, but the drug suspension, we lost a lot of fights and matchups in that time. And then conversely, Aljo kind of had a unique like rise up the ladder where some of the guys he fought were like the Brian Caraways of the world and people like that. So there's a lot, regardless of scenario, there's a lot of matchups that could be the next title fight. But I think if Sean O'Malley wins, I almost say, like, regardless of what else happens, like in the Aldo fight and everything else, like regardless of who wins Dillashaw Sterling, it's got to be O'Malley that's going to get. I mean, that's why the UFC's putting him in this matchup, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it obviously looks that way from afar, and I can't imagine anything else happening there. I think that's a pretty obvious fight to put together. And it'd be an interesting matchup either way. That's the good thing about the bantamweight division in general, is like you can shuffle that deck anywhere in the top 10, certainly the top 5. Just shuffle the deck and put a matchup together, and it's an amazing fight. Like the level of talent in that division right now is just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and it stretches across the whole sport. I mean, Bellator's obviously got their bantamweight Grand Prix, and we like to, people always like to talk about which Bellator fighters would succeed in the UFC. I think that their bantamweight division has a few names there too. So I don't know if this is going to be like the new lightweight, where it used to be that just the human body, a lot of the athletes would just, that's what they would be their cut weight, So it's interesting to see, like, maybe now the sport over time, for some reason, smaller guys have gotten involved, and here we are. But I think bantamweight's just super healthy, man, across the board.
It's true, dude. And I don't think, like, I haven't been a bantamweight since like 6th grade, probably. When's the last time you've touched 135?
Bantamweight, Jesus. I don't know, man. I was at probably, I don't think I've ever gotten in my adult life anywhere close to featherweight, or I teetered into the lightweight range, but so I'd probably fight at bantamweight. That would probably be mine. Shed 20 pounds, 25 pounds, and be good to go.
Cut
Cat, be great.
Yeah. Love it, dude. You'd be shredded, son. I love it.
Oh yeah.
So for anybody who wants to follow Nolan, I would say Twitter, but I'll let you plug anything else you got going on. But your Twitter is always popping.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You guys can follow me right there. You see my account, and Instagram. I'm building up a little bit as well at Nolan King MMA. Follow MMA Junkie, and I also do some stuff for Tapology. Those guys over there, I love them as well. And tomorrow I'll have a feature coming out on you were talking earlier about maybe some of the unknown fighters, but somebody on the prelims from UFC 278 who I talked to for 30, 45 minutes the other day, kind of about his journey. So that will be coming out. And then I want to plug you, man. I mean, people don't know this, but behind the scenes, you've done a lot for me in my career. And if you go through influences that I've had, I mean, there's very few, if not anybody else, that stuck out more than you. So I appreciate everything that you've done. You're killing it now in the promoting world, I know, and everything else you got going on. But we definitely miss you over here on the reporting side as well, man.
Well, thanks, dude. That means a lot. The kind words got me, you're choking me up a little bit here, Nolan, but I appreciate that, man. You're always awesome to work with. And I can genuinely say that, like, watching you do your thing and keep climbing and keep growing has been one of the most, like, satisfying professional feelings I've had. Like, it's been so cool to watch you just keep taking those steps. So keep making us proud, brother. And we gotta get you down to a 247 show. I think we need some, like, real coverage from Nolan King.
Yeah, man. If you know who I'm hitting up, if I ever end up in your neck of the woods, I'm hitting up first, right?
Let's do it. We'll get a beer and then watch some fights.
Yeah, sounds like a perfect plan, dude. But yeah, keep representing, man. The Flow Combat, might not be what it once was, but it still lives on,
For real. It's dude, the alumni there. It's gonna be like 10 years from now, we'll be able to look back and look at the alumni and be like, damn, son, like everybody was there at one point.
Lynch is killing it. Damon was there when I was there. I'm sure you guys had people come and go before that. And it's good stuff, man. I always say it's too bad that there's not more middle ground, opportunities for people. I think that was a very respected outlet, but I could do freelance for it. And I don't know. We could talk about this off there, but definitely it was good stuff, man.
We'll have another, like, MMA journalist convention kind of podcast for people down the road. Just uncover all the secrets of the industry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Sell right on OnlyFans.
Yeah, we'll put it behind a paywall for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll all, like, have bare feet in it. That's part of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
there's a camera. That makes you a lot of money.
Yeah, there'll be a camera just on our bare feet for people that you can switch to. So we're here for the people, dude. 247 fighting, here for the people. Well, thanks for joining, brother. We love you, even though you're from Boston and New England. We don't hold that against you. And we appreciate you jumping on, dude.
All right, dude. Anytime. Thanks, dog.
For sure, man. Take care, brother. Later. So that was Nolan King, everybody. Just joined us live there to talk about UFC 278. Let me know who you guys are going to pick. Comment. Let me know where we were wrong, because I think Nolan and I have been doing this MMA thing for a while. We know some stuff, but we don't know everything. Like Dylan Cole, even at the amusement park, shout out to him. He stayed watching and said, don't sleep on Luke Rockhold. So he is the one guy believing in Luke Rockhold, and I appreciate that. If he's right, he's going to look like a super genius. So that's awesome. I love it. Thank you guys for joining for another episode. We'll see you next week. And if you missed last week, we made an announcement that we are working on a brand new podcast studio. It'll be in person, brand new look, brand new feel, higher quality video, higher quality audio, higher quality everything. We are straight up going for it, and it's going to be awesome. So the next time, maybe not the next time you see us, but soon, the podcast is going to have a brand new look and feel, and you guys are going to love it. We're extremely excited to unveil that. And we got, like, at the end of the podcast, we got everybody chiming in with their hot takes. TJ Timbo saying Leon Edwards is going to shock everybody and take the belt. Hey, you and Dylan got the underdogs covered between Rockhold and Leon. I don't see it, but that's why we watch. We're still going to watch, and anything can happen inside that cage, as we've seen so many times. So thank you all for hopping on and joining. Thank you, Dylan, for hopping on for a second live from Dorney Park. Nolan King, MMA Junkie. Go follow him. Obviously, he's an amazing reporter, awesome news, great writer. Everything he does is just so quality, and as you just heard and perhaps saw, just a really solid all-around dude, too. One of the good guys we're supporting, so go give him a follow and a shout. And thank you guys for joining again. Go share the podcast. Tell your friends about 247 Fighting Championships, because we are not slowing down, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm very excited for what's coming down in the future. So we'll see you then, and we'll see you next week.